countless meetings with the Board of Trustees, the Planning Board, and the Zoning Board. She's a tireless advocate on behalf of Amityville homeowners, and we're a better village because of the tough questions that she asks. Perhaps we could take a moment to thank her and the Bay Village Civic Association. What a difference a year makes. A year ago, I sat right back there as Jim Wandell's campaign manager, cheering him on as he ran for office for the very first time. And if you know Mayor Wandell, you know he's a humble guy. But the promises he made on this dais a year ago were bold. Jim promised us that if we elected him mayor, that he would stabilize our taxes, make the beach free again with a cut to his own pay, begin the process of revitalizing our downtown, increase transparency, enact term limits, all while keeping our village safe and beautiful. These were big promises that would take a real commitment to follow through on. So when there was an opportunity for the mayor to appoint a trustee to a vacancy on the board, I was proud to accept that responsibility because I share Jim's passion in helping to turn things around in our village. As a board, we've worked together and unanimously agreed on 96% of agenda items. We were united 96% of the time when we started a downtown revitalization committee whose mission it is to make our downtown more vibrant while keeping with our village's quaintness. We were united when we opened up work sessions with the Board of Trustees, breaking the closed and locked door tradition. We were united when we waived $80,000 worth of rebuilding permit fees for Hurricane Sandy victims. We were united when we passed or denied over 200 requests for things like automotive licenses, on-street parking permits, or tax certiorari settlements. Once again, we were united when we hired 3 new police officers at $50,000, keeping our streets safe while minimizing the impact on taxpayers. Now, the Union Party would make you think that we're much more divided than we actually are. Actually, it's their campaign slogan, that their candidate would be a uniter, not a divider. The fact is, this board has disagreed on just 4% of agenda items. Now, my wife and I love each other, and we've known each other for 20 years. Okay. And we've been married for 5, and we have 2 kids, a home, and a mortgage. And we disagree on a heck of a lot more than 4%. Still, let's dissect that 4% that we disagreed on, and you can decide which side of the political fence you stand on. The 2% property tax cap. The Amityville First Party voted 3-2 not to pierce the cap. The first time ever in Amityville, and we gave you the lowest tax rate increase in the last 5 years. Regarding repealing the $35 fee to make the Amityville beach free once again, replacing the revenue with a cut to our own pay, the Amityville First Party members took the pay cut to make the beach free. Regarding term limits, 2 4-year term limits for the mayor and the Board of Trustees, a measure that increases transparency and accountability and gives you more of an opportunity to serve on the board. The Amityville First Party members voted 3-2 to pass term limits. We're proud of our accomplishments, whether they were accomplished unanimously or just 3 votes. But we have much more work to be done. Earlier this month, the State Comptroller issued a report stating that of 535 villages in New York State, Amityville was the 2nd worst off when it comes to our finances. The Comptroller's quote was that the report was meant to sound the alarms. Now, if you've been reading the papers, you probably know that Amityville is at a crossroads. We inherited $10 million in debt. We have a fund balance that is still negative, a credit rating that is just 1 notch above junk, and residents who are tired of double-digit tax increases. Now, we can choose to bury our heads in the sand on these facts, or we can elect somebody who is committed and able to do something about it. I've spoken with so many of our neighbors, and everyone agrees they love our village, but they're tired of our high taxes. They want the board to make the tough decisions to comply with the 2% property tax cap, but keep our police, fire, and other services that make Amityville so great. The fact is that the Amityville First Party is the first team in a long time to strike that low-tax, high-quality service balance. And because of Mayor Wandell's leadership and the Amityville First Party's majority, I believe Amityville's brightest days are still ahead of us. That is why I'm respectfully asking for your vote on March 18th so that together we can keep Amityville moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Andy Powell.
My name is Andy Powell, and Joan, it's a pleasure to be here with the Bay Village Civic Association. I thank you and your organization again for all you do. Nick, it's certainly a pleasure to be
I'm sorry, Andy, just a minute, let me make sure. Can everybody hear him well? No. Please stop when it's working better, please. Otherwise, I'll give you mine.
How's that?
Better.
Again, my name is Andy Powell, and I'm glad to be here with each of you this evening. And I thank Joan and the Bay Village Civic Association, as well as Nick, for being here. I'm a lifelong resident of the village, and we have a family business here for the last 106 years. I've had a deep commitment to this village, and I have decided to run for trustee for one of two reasons. Nick brings out the uniter, not the divider. From my perspective, I sit and I watch, and there's 5 people on that board, 2 of which have no opinion. I don't really think that's right. We had a mayor that was elected with less than 50% of the vote, and we had a trustee appointed, and Jessica probably carried the whole day. I think the other 2 trustees were elected by this village. They have a right to have a voice in this village, and it perturbs me that it seems to be disregarded. I run as a uniter, not a divider, for the simple fact that I would remain an independent candidate and value the opinion of each and every member of that board. I sit here and I listen about term limits. We've spent 3 meetings on term limits. The voters should have decided that. We talk about the police contract. That contract was opened by a previous administration. This administration howled on the extension and now has taken all the credit for hiring 3 new police officers. I too think there's a lot of work to be done, and I think there's a lot of communication to be had, and I think we put our heads together as a 5-member board and we come up with what's good for this village. And I thank you for this evening.
Okay, but at this time, we will, I believe, start with Andy Powell with the first question, and then we will alternate. The village budget has been a focus of attention for many. The dilemma is, how do you properly run the village and provide a responsible budget that addresses village needs within the 2% tax cap? Where is the revenue coming from? And how many more cuts can we sustain and still be viable?
Joan, that's true. The taxes have been high, and we are under the constraints of the 2% tax cap, which I think that we have an obligation to hold the line on taxes and work within the tools that have been given us. One of the things that you don't hear mentioned is that we have money outstanding from Suffolk County for the nautical park. Nobody has seemed to gone after those funds. So I had made a call today to our county officials just to see if, in fact, that was possible. And not only is it possible that they would like to have this discussion, I think it would be imperative in order to narrow the gap of our deficit, which is roughly around $537,000. We could also be a little more diligent on looking for shared services, I think, with other governments, trying to lighten the load and spread the cost of doing this. Several other things we could do. Certainly our code enforcement, we could do a little better job with our code enforcement. Certainly get a little revenue this way. But there's no question that our village faces tough times, and the 2% tax cap makes it difficult even under the pressure of state mandates for health care and pension costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the same question, Mr. LaLota, would you like me to say it again?
I think that when it comes to stabilizing your property taxes, you want results, not excuses. Yes, our village's contractual costs for employees' health care and pensions have risen beyond the 2% property tax cap, making the compliance with that tax cap difficult, but not impossible if you have a board committed to those results. Here's the proof. Last year, despite those same rising costs, the Amityville First Party's majority, with Mayor Wandel, Jessica Bertius, and myself, voted not to pierce the property tax cap. As the village's budget officer, I was personally responsible for dissecting the village's 400-line budget and find ways to trim some of those spending costs. We complied with the 2% despite opposition from our colleagues on the board when we voted 3-2 not to pierce the cap. The Union Party says this 3-2 vote is a sign of the board being divided. Maybe they're right, but we're proud about where we stand on the tax cap. Cutting from the village's $15.2 million budget is not the only way to save money. Increasing revenue, specifically through grant money, is the most effective way to ease the burden on the taxpayer and not diminish our ability to deliver services from our police, fire, and other departments. As someone who is Chief of Staff to a state senator, has relationships with dozens of state, county, and town officials, I am uniquely qualified to help apply for and receive funds on behalf of Amityville Village regarding grants. The board will continue to find ways to find revenue and is currently considering a proposal by Trustee Dennis Seary regarding updating things like parking fines and building permit fees. But even with smart budgeting and grants, we're still going to need some help to get out of the woods. The state comptroller recently released a report that told us of 535 villages throughout the state, we are the second worst off with regard to our finances. Let me say that again. We're at the bottom 1/2 of 1% of all New York State villages. And if we're going to do something about our $10 million budget, our $400,000 deficit, our credit rating that is just one notch above junk, and fix our roads that are 10 years past their life cycle without giving you 10% tax increases, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the Amityville PBA contract, which accounts for almost 40% of the village budget, paid the average officer $176,000 a year last year, and gives $250,000 retirement packages to retiring officers. Now, we love our police, and let me say very clearly on the record, loud and clear, that I support a fully manned and a fully funded, equipped and trained village police department, and my record reflects just that. This is why I recommended the hire of 3 new village police officers, bringing our total manning from 18 to 21 police officers. I have supported the promotion of 1 officer to detective and to help clear the backlog of police investigative work. I have supported every request for training and funding made by the Chief of Police because I know that our families are safer and our homes are worth more with the village police department. Let me clearly debunk the rumor that I want to disband the police department and pledge that as long as I'm on the board, I will fight for a well-funded police department trained and equipped to handle all of our village's needs. But we can't bury our heads in the sand on this one. Our PBA contract, which is the most expensive in the state, is bankrupting our village and crippling our taxpayers. This contract is the main budgetary reason for our firefighters' pension fund hitting rock bottom last year, our other village employees not seeing raises in years, or us not having any money for capital projects like road repair. So here's my plan. A unified board of trustees should request that the PBA open the contract to do 2 main things. Institute a base pay freeze for any officer who made more than $150,000 last year. And while we have that contract open, we should raise the pay of new officers in Amityville Village from $42,000 to $78,000, a rate at which they can actually live and buy a home here. This plan, which does not cut from any officer's pay, would put $800,000 back into the village coffers over the next 4 years. Again, this plan asks for the highest paid officers to take a pay freeze, not a cut, and to forego those contractual pay raises so that new officers can earn enough to live here and our village can regain some of its fiscal health. The 2014-15 budget is due on May 1st, and it's important to proactively plan for a balance between excellent services and affordable tax rates for taxpayers. My budget plan does just that. Thank you.
Question 2, we'll start again with Nick. We'll start with Nick LaLota. What action would you take immediately to attempt to restore our village shopping district to an appealing area to walk, park, shop, and dine? Would you seek federal or state funds for help?
Regarding code enforcement, the current Board of Trustees has done a lot to change the way we enforce our code. We've hired a new code enforcement officer. We've increased patrols by that new code enforcement. It's Tom Whalen, who many of you know. We've increased warnings and summonses north of Sunrise Highway because we've heard from the McLeod Civic Association. But to the question of what we would do regarding code enforcement to develop, I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
What action would you take immediately to attempt to restore our village shopping district to an appealing area to walk, park, shop, and dine? And would you seek federal or state funds for help?
I would continue to empower the Downtown Revitalization Committee, which this administration started about 6 months ago. The committee is comprised of about 12 members with various backgrounds. professional personnel here in the village. We have attorneys, paralegals, urban planners, members of the planning board and zoning board. It's a very diverse group of individuals who are charged with ensuring that our downtown makes a turn. We've seen a multi-year decline in our downtown. Regarding code enforcement, I'm of the opinion that we need to enforce things like our sign code and our overall village code, but we should do so at a moderate pace. If we went tomorrow and enforced every single line of that code tomorrow, we would probably see an increase in our vacancy rate in our stores. Currently, 19 of 98 village storefronts are unoccupied. That's about a 20% rate. I think that if tomorrow, if we crack down on all of those violations of the code, you would see that number rise. So I would gradually, through warnings first, and then fines afterwards, enforce that sign code. We're on a track right now to do that. And of course, I would seek other state funding, federal funding, county funding to do that. However, there's a catch. When you apply for and receive some of these types of grants, the fine print sometimes says that the village loses some of its sovereignty with regard to density of housing or other quality of life issues. So I'd be very careful before jumping into the grant pool, which would help shore up our finances, but might have the village lose some of its sovereignty. So it's a very careful balance to play, but yes, I would pursue grants. I work in Albany, I go there 3 times a month, and I would leverage my relationship as a chief of staff to a state senator to do just that for the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question, or?
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure. What action would you take immediately to attempt to restore our village shopping district to an appealing area to walk, park, shop, and dine, and would you seek federal or state funds for help?
I'm just going to read the legislative intent here on the sign ordinance. Protect property values, create, promote, and attract an economic business climate, enhance and protect Amityville's physical appearance and environment, preserve the scenic and natural beauty of the village, and provide a more enjoyable and pleasing community. I think code enforcement, which has been ignored far too long, has failed us on 4 out of the 8 issues here. I think we should crack down on our codes. Do we have to be heavy-handed about it? No, I don't think we have to be heavy-handed about it. I think we can go out to these businesses and hand them a notice of violation and give them a window of amnesty. And quite frankly, I'd like to see the Chamber of Commerce a little more active in this, and I think they can be. For the simple reason, we could have the Chamber of Commerce possibly host a breakfast and get some of these non-compliant shop owners to come and have a member of the planning board, village board, zoning board explain some of these issues that they may not be aware of. It might be more of an education issue than a violation issue. And I think this is the way we bring these stores into compliance. And as far as signs and other ordinances, I think we look for grants. I think we look carefully. But I also think, very simply, by our own code, 30 days after a business ceases to exist, those signs should be removed. And I know we have some historical signs here in the villages, and the buildings have been empty for longer than 30 days. But I think that we would want to encourage our store owners to be compliant with our ordinances. Certainly, if you have a needed store, it's a more attractive place to go shop. But I think the Chamber of Commerce has a role to play in this village, and I think that we do look for grants that are going to be advantageous to our community.
Thank you. I know you haven't seen the questions, and this one is not the one you've addressed. Is almost coming up again. It's sort of a duplicate of some of that. But question 3, and I'll address this to Andy first. Recently, a vote was taken by the Board of Trustees to limit the number of terms an individual may serve as mayor or trustee to 2 consecutive terms. The vote was not unanimous. What are your thoughts on this issue? Why not use a referendum vote to accomplish this, particularly in light of the special election?
I should have just stayed standing.
And does everybody hear him? Is that mic working?
Joe, my thoughts on this are simple. Whatever my position on the issue is really is immaterial. The board presented this term limit law, 3 meetings it took up. I don't know that it necessarily needed to take 3 meetings of a village board. My thoughts are we are having a special election. If the public can elect the village officials, they ought to be able to have a voice on term limits. Very simply put, I don't think it's that complicated. And quite frankly, if we have a mayor who was not elected by 50% of the vote, and a trustee who was appointed, and the trustee that was appointed did not receive a vote and cast a swing vote on term limits, to me that's appalling, especially when we had an election, or we have an election coming up March 18th. So my position is really immaterial. I would rather have the voters speak to the issue.
To the contrary, I think that a trustee's opinion on term limits is very important. And Andy refers to meetings that have happened, and I haven't seen Andy at a meeting of the Board of Trustees in the last 2 years that I've attended. But if one came to one of those several public meetings regarding term limits, one would know that I'm a passionate advocate for them. For the last 5 years, I've worked for the House of Representatives and the New York State Senate, and I know that we as a society would be much better off if elected officials focused more on results rather than re-election. The annual First Party clearly supports a more transparent government where you have a greater say. We proved that when we opened up previously closed and locked-door meetings of the Board of Trustees. We proved that when we created citizen-led committees to help with Sandy reconstruction, revitalizing our downtown, and planning on how to spend a $500,000 beach grant. Term limits give more opportunities for regular citizens to serve their government. I believe that two four-year terms for the President of the United States, who presides over a $3 trillion budget, are good enough, and they're good enough for the mayor and the trustees in the village of Amityville and the $15 million budget here. The experienced argument against term limits shouldn't be so quickly dismissed. As our former state senator, Owen Johnson, for whom I worked briefly, served in the Senate for 40 years and was an excellent advocate for the village of Amityville. But I believe that there's a saturation point where most elected officials start to lose touch with their constituents. Perhaps that saturation contributed to our double-digit tax increases, numerous bond rating decreases, $10 million in debt, and the village sitting on a $500,000 village beach grant for 5 years. And whether you agree or disagree with term limits, I hope that we can all agree that promises should be kept. And last year, after knocking on a whole slew of doors from residents who told us they wanted term limits, Jim Wandel and the annual First Party made a campaign promise to enact term limits at a meeting at the Board of Trustees. And we hope that above all else, the public knows that if the annual First Party makes a promise, we will deliver on it. Thank you.
Okay. Losing track of who we're answering this? Okay. Trustee LaLota. The next question is about code enforcement. Now, I'm going to ask the question because we have it, but you've actually addressed it quite a bit, so it's up to you what you'd like to do with this. But it's almost as though you had read it, although I know you didn't. Code enforcement of signs and other visible infractions needs attention. Village codes were upgraded and revised to more adequately reflect our character. Some businesses have been out of business for years while their signs remain. Others in business have no sign or one that's completely inappropriate. What's your recommendation? I know you've already touched on it, but if you'd like to say something.
Thank you. The one thing I would add that we haven't yet done this year is I would add a civilian-run code committee where we can uproot those old lines in the code that no longer apply, and we can install new measures in that code so that we can judge a code based on what is real in 2014. The code handbook is about that thick. I don't know that anybody knows it better than our code enforcement officer, but if we took a strong look at that and empowered a civilian-run committee like we've had at our beach and our downtown, we might be able to find a code that is more suitable to what our village needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to take the question? Yes? Yes. Okay. Code enforcement of signs and other visible infractions needs attention. Village codes were upgraded and revised to more adequately reflect our character. Some businesses have been out of business for years while their signs remain. Others in business have no sign or one that's completely inappropriate. What is your recommendation?
I think we have our sign code right here, and it states in 30 days if a business ceases to exist, the sign should come down. I think the current landlords ought to be given an opportunity to remove those signs of non-operating businesses and give them a time frame in 30 days. If those signs aren't down in 30 days, if we can empower our highway department to take them down and put it on the tax bill, then they should come down. I think other businesses who have operated, as I mentioned before, without any knowledge of paper signs or length of paper signs or window wraps ought to be informed of what the ordinance is and given an opportunity to remedy that. And again, I mentioned the Chamber, and I still think the Chamber has a vital role to play in this as an advocate for this village on a retail basis.
Thank you. We have two more questions that are coming, and then we have a question or two from the public, if we have time permitting. And this one I'll start with Andy. Absentee landlords in both residential and commercial areas are another issue. Many of these landlords do not maintain their properties, whether it be the sidewalks after a storm, the general appearance, or illegally renting out homes. Do you have a solution?
I think that speaks to quality of life issues. And there's probably nothing more in a society or a community that's more of a blight than an absentee landlord that doesn't care or doesn't maintain their property. Again, we have our code enforcement officers to go in and address those. I oftentimes think we ought to have a full-time fire marshal to go in and do inspections. Of course, that would be a fee for service. Who wants to pay fees? But how do you gain entree into some of these absentee landlord buildings and offices? Sidewalks, that should be cleared. It's on the books. They could be fined. Again, some of this stuff is just purely educational. But I think if you don't crack down on the quality of life issues and you just keep letting it slide, then what we're going to have is it's going to slide all the way down to Merrick Road, and we'll have no village. And as much as you like to be polite and not step on anybody's toes, and you don't want to ruin anybody's business, but you want the businesses to conform to the village that they're operating in. So I think that we use our code enforcement officers to the best of our ability and enforce the codes that we have on the books. It's that simple.
Thank you. Absentee landlords in both residential and commercial areas are another issue. Many of these landlords do not maintain their properties, whether it be the sidewalks after a storm, general appearance, or illegally renting out homes. Do you have a solution?
So there's a new sheriff in town. His name is Tom Whalen, and he patrols our village once a day on issues just like this. He's new in the position, and he has a specific order from the mayor to specifically crack down on deadbeat landlords who are making the rest of our property values decline. It's so important that we do that, and that's why we've empowered Tom to do just that. We have a process where warnings come first, and then fines and summonses come second. Because we are a friendly bay village, and we should still warn our neighbors before we just issue them a fine. Those fines are a good source of revenue, and we will seek and capture that revenue every chance we can get it, and we've done just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, question 6. Our roads, oh, I'm sorry. Now this is going to, did I have it? Yes, you did. Okay, yes, it's going to Nick, and it's question 6. Okay. Our roads are in dire need of repair and or repaving. What is your plan to accomplish this endeavor? Over what period of time, and how would you propose to pay for it?
The frigid, cold, 10 snowstorms, all the salt and paving have really done a hard job to our roads, which are 10 years past their life cycle. The potholes are bad news, and we've all driven over them. They're the size of pizza boxes. But the reason these potholes have not yet been filled is not because we don't have the funding or the manning or the equipment to do so. When a crew attempts to fill a pothole, when the weather is still cold and wet, the filling pops right back out, and it's a massive waste of taxpayer money. So here's our plan. Every moment the weather permits, our hardworking DPW is filling potholes throughout the village, where we estimate over 200 to exist. These 6-man crews are able to fill approximately 50 potholes per day, and they're limited by the one hot box truck the village owns. Knowing that we all want to fill these holes as soon as possible, and our DPW crew, which is very hardworking, and its equipment is stretched to the max, I sought the help of the Town of Babylon's purchasing officer so that we can share an agreement that they have on the books with a private contractor who fills potholes. And as of just last night, upon my recommendation, the board voted to spend $20,000 to hire a civilian crew to double our village's effort to fill these potholes that are damaging our cars and hurting our quality of life. The money that we will spend on this unforeseen expenditure will come from the savings created by the mayor's recent decision to have a part-time secretary who is paid hourly with no benefits. That's the short-term answer to our roads. Here's the long-term solution to our village road system. The village has approximately 32 miles of village roadway, the majority of which is 10 years past our village life cycle. And unfortunately, when we were sworn in a year ago, we weren't handed a plan for how those roads are going to be overhauled, nor were we handed a pot of money to do so wish. So this is the plan that Jim Wandell, Jessica Bernius, and I came up with. Starting in the summer of 2015, the village will start an 8x4 road plan, an 8-year program whereby each year we repave and resurface 4 miles of road, 8 summers, 4 miles each, 32 miles of roadway. The plan will culminate in a road system that will be better able to handle the winter like we just had. In 2023, when that 8x4 plan is done, we'll transition to a more deliberate 16x2 plan, whereby we'll do 2 miles of road for the next 16 summers. This plan will bring us to the year 2039, when Justin Bieber will have gray hair. Just like any plan that spans multiple years and millions of dollars, we have to be prepared to call an audible. Sometimes those repairs will be needed to happen at a quicker pace, and sometimes those roads will hold up stronger and will slow it down and save you some money. But whatever the pace, the funding for this infrastructure plan will have to come from borrowing. So it's imperative that we earn a bond rating upgrade to be able to borrow at a reasonable interest rate. And the annual first party believes that closing half of our $700,000 deficit that we inherited is a step in the right direction to getting a bond rating increase and thus providing a long-term solution to our village roads. That's our short and long-term solutions. Thank you.
Andy, would you like me to rephrase the question?
Please.
Our roads are in dire need of repair, and we're repaving. What is your plan to accomplish this endeavor? Over what period of time, and how would you propose to pay for it?
It's interesting. 3 months ago, nobody wanted to talk about potholes. And I became the pothole king. And that was my whole thing. We were going to get these potholes filled, and we are going to get them filled. So then last night, we had the mayor on record. He said there's no money in the budget, no money in the pipeline for road repairs. And last night, we came up with $20,000 for pothole repair for a subcontractor. That kind of makes you a little skeptical about the whole election process somewhat, or at least it makes me a little skeptical. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have a 3-point pothole plan to fill all the potholes in this village. And our highway department does yeoman's work doing this. And Nick, you said they were the size of pizza boxes? I have some that are deeper than two deep graves. But then we're going to establish a pothole hotline, which may sound funny, but any resident can then call in and report a pothole, and we'll get that pothole filled within 48 hours. And we're going to continue to maintain our roads. Furthermore, I'd like to see any utility that has to dig up our road, they've got to do a 4x4 hole, they should have to do an 8x8 patch and put it back as good or better than when they dug it up. As far as the roads, and they are deplorable, we all know that. The village back in 2004 has a survey, and they have the roads cataloged. I think we could probably dust off that plan and recatalog the roads and start from there. I don't know that we necessarily need a whole new survey, but I think we use the plan that's in place and build on it. And of course, the financing, our bond rating, we're certainly not going to borrow anytime soon. We have to close our deficit, but there's no question that paving the roads is not going to be a small change project. So in order to do it correctly, we are going to have to bond those roads, but we can't do it until we're in a budgetary black.
Thank you very much. That's the last question that was submitted by the Civic Association members. However, we had two questions, but one is really redundant, but this one is a little bit different from the public. And I will start with Andy. The board seems divided. How do you propose to work together and unite to improve the village?
I have stated repeatedly that I will be an independent voice on this board, not looking to swing a majority one way or the other. I will work with everybody on this board open-mindedly, fairly, value your opinions and your ideas, and maintain my independency. Now, do I think that we're going to agree on everything? No, I don't really think we're going to agree on everything. I'm not sure everybody agrees 96% on everything. But I will promise you this. I will be independent, and I will work with everyone on that board regardless of where the decision comes from, as long as the decision benefits Amityville in a positive way.
Let's be truthful for a second. I find it hard to believe that an individual running for trustee who had his petitions run by two other trustees who are not on the Amityville First Party will be an independent vote. I also find it hard to believe that the same individual who took $11,000 in campaign contributions from a former deputy mayor and a former mayor will also be independent and represent you more than they represent them. Thank you.
So much for you. Okay, now, thank you for those responses. There will now be a 2-minute summation from each candidate. Nick, we'll start with you. 2 minutes.
So my mom called me the other day and asked me how my campaign for trustee is going. And I told her it was going really good. Been knocking on a lot of doors and talking to a lot of residents. And when I lead with that 2% property tax cap thing, they love it. They say, wow, you guys did that? You stayed within the 2% property tax cap? I said, yeah, and we had the lowest budget rate increase in the last 5 years. And I said, we're looking after your services, and we want to keep them well funded. And generally, things are going well. But I said, Mom, and Mom's right back there. I said, Mom, but there's one problem that we have, and it's kind of your fault. 35 years ago, you should have given birth to me at Brunswick Hospital, not out in Bethpage. We all laughed. Andy Powell's a nice guy. If we had a referendum on who the nicest guy in the village is, I'd probably vote for Andy. But with the challenges that we're facing, we need more than just a really nice guy who is from here. If we're going to recover from our $10 million debt, and if we're going to get to a point where you don't cringe when you open up your tax bill, we have to start electing people based on their accomplishments, not just where they were born. I'm running on my background and my record. I am an Annapolis graduate with a master's in business who helped pass the first budget within the 2% property tax cap. I took a pay cut to eliminate admission fees at the beach, and I helped to start a committee whose path it is to revitalize our downtown. And with the board, with 3, 4, or 5 votes, able to make tough decisions to both stabilize our taxes and keep our high-quality services, I look forward to continuing to serve on that board. I'd like to close by thanking the Bay Village Civic Association for hosting us, Andy for discussing the issues, and everybody who came here tonight who is so passionate about Amityville. This is why I'm excited about the future of Amityville. You care, we care to talk about the issues, and we're going to make it a great run. Thank you.
Andy, a 2-minute summation, thank you.
I was born in Brunswick. That makes me his father. I ran for trustee because I did not like the way I had seen the divide. I will maintain to you and maintain my independency on this board regardless of what anybody thinks, because that's just the way I do things. I'm going to go for what I think is right, regardless of who thought the idea. And that's my pledge. It doesn't matter who supported me. I'm not tied to their apron strings. Independency on a board is an important thing anytime. Valuing people's opinions is an important thing anytime. I don't need to have it my way 100% of the way. Matter of fact, I feel so strongly about this village, I'm not even going to bother taking his salary, for the simple reason is that I think that village can use it more and in a better or more constructive way than I probably will. As for all of you, I ask for all of your votes. I don't know that I'll get all your votes, I'm sure I won't, but I appreciate you all being here to listen to myself and to Nick. And a matter of fact, Nick, I like you even if you were from Arkansas. I'd like to thank Joan and the rest of you for being here this evening. I look forward to your support on March 18th. And again, thank you for listening to us.